Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Hi, DC.
Hello.
Thank you for being here today. We have DC Gomez. She's author of USA Today bestselling urban fantasy books, and we're going to learn all about them because I know very little. So I'm very excited.
Miss Tricia, it is a pleasure to be here with you. Audience, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
I know. I was so excited to meet you on the panel the other day, and I can't wait to dive in. So your most recent book, do you want to start there, or do you want to start at the beginning?
Let's start with the most recent because it seems to be causing the most, controversial for my readers. So I think we can start with that.
Okay, so we do need the tea on this.
So I do multiple genres. So I go everything from urban fantasy. I have children's books, dark humor, devotionals. I just dabble in a lot of different things. But one of the things most common about my readers know is that I don't do spice. I don't even do steam, I guess, for that matter. So most of my books are fairly, I want to say PG-13 for the most part. So this new book is called Cursed by Birth. It is part of the Once Upon a Curse series retelling. And the entire series, in order to be part of it, you have to have one spicy scene. So for anybody who doesn't know what that means, because I didn't, a spicy scene has to be like a sex scene that is opened. So it's open door. So everybody, I'm like, oh, okay. I also did not realize this is a romance collection and I don't write romance. So when I joined them, one of the questions I'd ask, I do urban fantasy. Can I do that? I'm like, yeah, have a blast. Just do a retelling. So this is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. I'm going to say loosely retelling. Once you finish the book, you're going to kind of get it. But it is a serial killer adventure. So it is a serial killer. It starts with, kind of Black Widow feels to it. So it has a whole bunch of elements that are super packed, super action packed, but it takes place in my Reaper's universe. So it brings all these characters back for the people who've been reading this series. You don't have to read the series to pick up the book, and it is a standalone. So everybody who has read it has tons of Easter eggs that they can go crazy for. But at the same time, it is a lot of madness. And people were like, oh my God, chapter 1. I'm like, I figured we were going to start with a spice and something that I knew we was going to do at the beginning. Just put it out there and see what happens.
Well, I mean, yeah. So, and probably if a reader doesn't want to read that, they can just page turn, get me to the story, right?
I feel. I was like, just quickly past that part, you should be perfectly okay. So, yes.
Okay, well, good. So Red Riding Hood retelling, it sounds like it has a lot of moving parts in there. The main character is a serial killer? Are you supposed to like this person?
So it's funny because people do. So it is a complicated twist at the end. So I'm just going to tell you that one of the best compliments that I got was like, I'm still in shock. Like, I don't know what happened to me. Like, what did you do? And I was like, I'm sorry. Not sorry. What can I say? So yeah. It is a thriller. It is lots of action. So you do realize that we start with a crime. And then you're going through the book trying to figure out, can the good guys find her? Because you know who she is. At least you think you know who she is. But where is she at? Why can't they find this person? What's going on in the story? So you get elements of mystery, elements of thrillers. You also get lots of action. And it is a supernatural world. So urban fantasy takes place in a small town in Texas. So it's in Texarkana. And underneath the human society, there's a current of supernatural worlds. Somebody said, like, where are the humans? I'm like, well, the people running the station happen to be human. You just have a little mix. So you get to see a lot more of the supernatural community than you do get to see the actual humans in the town.
Oh, fun. Yeah, so somebody was talking to me about magical realism the other day, and I had to look that up, and then I was like, oh, I write that. So this would fit into the magical realism genre, correct?
A little. This is straight fantasy because
Oh,
we're
okay.
literally having your magical realism has so many aspects of like it could happen. This could happen in real life. You have those touches that make you go, okay, this one, let's hope it doesn't happen in real life. We're just gonna put it out there. Like we got some
Okay, yeah.
you got some shifters, you got some, dwarves, gnomes, you name it. So you have the entire supernatural community that normally is very fantasy. It just happens to be in the real world.
Oh, fun. I love those. That's where I love to be. So fun. So how did you have the idea for the story?
One of the things, at least for this one, that was really hard because everybody was saying which retelling they wanted to have, like which one that they were passionate about and how they were going to twist it. And I always have a joke in terms of like, is really Red Riding Hood the innocent one? Really? Let's talk about her. Like you have this little girl in the wolves, and there's a bunch of like things like, what are you doing there, girl? Like, why didn't you call for help? Like, should are you really that innocent? Like, what's in the basket? Like, how are you gonna go save your grandma? So I really wanted to have some fun with the concept of like, what if the things that we think we know are not really how it happened? And just kind of spin it around and like, can she be the bad one? Because we're always thinking about saving her. I was like, what about she doesn't need any saving? What do we do? So I kind of enjoy the what if of the story.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm not sure I want to live in your brain. I'll just mark that down as one place I don't want to live.
You're not the first one who said that. I'll have to give you that one. I have many
That
people
was
lately.
a compliment of the highest level.
I have a lot of friends who are like, ooh, what do you think on your free time? It's like my mind doesn't stop. And as a writer, you probably understand that concept. But it doesn't stop. Like something's gonna trigger something. And before you know, it's like, ooh, that could be fun.
Yeah, I try to have conversations with my husband. Sometimes he's like, no, just don't, just stop. And I'm like, but he's like, go talk to your friends.
I completely understand. It is very different sometimes, especially with my family who are not writers. When I'm like, let me tell you what I'm writing. And they all give me this look like, oh, on purpose. Yes, yes, I'm doing this on purpose. Thank you. Like, this is meant to happen. My mom now just has a blast because she gets the inside of how I'm creating this and questions me all the time. Like, okay.
That can be a good thing because when people question me, my mind like starts racing even more. Like, oh, what if and what if and why would they do that and what were their motives? And very
It's a lot
fun.
of fun.
So is it all? No, you said you write in several different genres. Is this current one an adult? Yeah, it's got spice in it, so it's adult, right?
So the series itself, I usually kind of say this book is definitely adult. The series, I say it's not specifically a young adult series, but it's age appropriate. So
Okay.
I wouldn't feel too bad if somebody picked it up. Somebody actually read the book and said they wouldn't feel bad if their teenager picked it up. And I was like, oh, okay. So when it comes to books, I let parents decide what's appropriate for their kids and not. I do have right now, I have a Kickstarter going on that it is a young adult. It is a very, somehow I'm in the seasons of retelling because that one happened to be an Alice in Wonderland retelling and I didn't meant to do that. So
Interesting.
yeah, totally did not meant to do that until I went back and looked at it. It's like, this is so Alice in Wonderland. It's not even funny. So it's called Another World. It's right now going on. It closes in about a week or so, but it's the story of a young girl who happens to go from Kansas, like spent some years in Kansas, and moves to New York City and has, typical story of a teenager. She's bullied, she hates it, she wants to go back, and she's being tortured. So she runs down a garbage chute and ends up in another planet. And
Ooh.
so think about this other planet, more medieval. You got some knights and you got some witches, and then you have a dragon. So she's like, maybe home wasn't that bad. Like, how do I get back there? Like, how did I get stuck here? So this one is definitely much more age appropriate for that. But yes.
Fun. Well, that sounds like very Brandon Sanderson-ish to me. I think in one of his stories that I read with my son, the boy falls into a hippo's mouth or something like that. Did you read that one? He falls into an alternate world, which is very medieval-ish as well. So yeah.
I love his stuff. I also love the way that he just mingles all these different genres together and just is not afraid to take a leap. Because some of the stuff I was like, I would have not seen those two things put together. And he just doesn't care. It's like, I think this will be fun. I'm like, I agree. I'm in.
fun. Well, tell me about your other series, because I was looking on your website and you have the Order's Assassin series, which is an urban fantasy too, and it looks like the second book in that series is out.
So that one is also, I guess I should rephrase that all of my urban fantasies all takes place in the same universe. Just
Okay.
because I'm kind of lazy and decided to write too many magical universes were hard to keep up in my head. I was like, I don't know if I can keep up with all of them. So basically, you get to see characters kind of crossing over. So the Otis of Assassin is book 2. It's called The Traitors, book 2 in that series, and is one of our spin-off characters. So you get to see Eric trying to figure out who betray the Order of Witches and kind of being, save the day, except that he accidentally has become their cleanup man and he hates it with a passion. He's like, this is not what I set out for. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to save people. I would have been a cop. So now he's doing the dirty work for the Order, not abuse at all.
Well, that's not a great position to be in. Where does the world start then? Take me back to the beginning of that world.
So let's start from book 1, which is called Death's Intern. So for a person who's trying to market online, you would think I would use key terms that don't trigger all the algorithms in the wrong way. So death doesn't seem to be the word that any of the algorithms enjoy. And I'm like, that's the title of the book. I should have thought of something different at the beginning. So this is before we started in that world. So Death's Intern is book 1. And it starts very low on magic. So this is a girl who moves into a new town. She's an army vet. And she's trying to find herself. And literally she's trying to restart her life. Except that previously she accidentally kills Death's old intern. So now she has the job. So she has a job. She has a choice. She can not take it, but she has one friend that is missing, and the only people that have the resources to help her happen to work for Death. So she takes the job in a hope to find Bob, and then the madness begins.
Okay. Fun. And does she have any magical skills, or is she a supernatural, or do we get to know that at all?
She has nothing. She is a waitress. She's trying to make living. She's a musician. She slowly picks up talents in magic as she works with Death. So her powers are inherited from Death, and then they just kind of explode would be the easiest way to do it. She now works with a talking cat. I see that you have a cat on the list, but yes, so she has a Constantine happens to be her guardian and her trainer, who is absolutely evil. She works with a boy genius who's more like an arms dealer, and all these little pieces of this universe. So when I first wrote this book, we all have that one book in our soul that we want to do. And it's like, so this was the book I needed to, I was sick and tired of what I was doing. I needed something different. So here we are, we're going to start this magic. And I did not realize that. I was like, oh, wow, this just exploded in all sorts of different things. So one book ended up with like 5 novels in this series. It has 3 novellas. We got standalones coming up and spinoffs. So yes, what one book can actually do.
That is so much fun. Yes, I can't let go of my characters either. So I had one series, and then I was like, oh, I don't want these characters to leave. So we'll do a spin-off series.
I never actually expected to continue with them until I realized that once the world expands, you can go anywhere. So while Isis can come and visit and Constantine can be around, I think Constantine, which is the talking cat, is the one constant throughout the different books, so people get to call because he's been around for 5,000 years. So it's easy to have an immortal cat jump in from one book to the other and be like that glue that connects them and kind of get people excited about them.
Well, that's fun because, as a reader too, like if I like a book, I want to keep reading all of the author's books. And if they're in the same world, even better, because, I can just jump from one to the next and know where I am.
I enjoy books that have an overarching connection, but I don't want the same series to continue. I find that I have a really low tolerance for like a long series. I'm like, okay, when is this arc over? And then when does the next one pick up? So that's kind of what you get with these ones is you have Isis's world and you get a little bit of Eric. Now you get a little bit of Bob. So you get a little bit of them without having to feel like, okay, 15 books in, we're still here. So we kind of jump from different people to the other.
Oh, fun. Yeah. So you don't have like one overarching villain that they're trying to destroy or anything like that. It's going to take them 10 books to do.
No, we have moved on. I think we have tackled that one. We have moved on. Trying to think of like, the big villain, do we kill them off? Do we not? I'm sure eventually they can come back, but it's not the same one that we're tracking down. I think every
Okay.
arc has their own special focus, and then we can move on to the next.
Well, that's fun because you get to learn about different characters and, their backstories and where they're going and what they're trying to do in their lives. So.
I'm also the one that doesn't write all of that from the beginning. So I tend to discover them on the page. So basically, if they're not the main focus, I would like to have like a whole history and background of every character. I'm not that person. I'm very much on the spot. I tend to be much more plot driven. And as we get to these characters, you get to find out who they are and where they come from. And I think, as I tell my readers, I'm like, we do it together, because I didn't know that about them either. So we're all figuring this out as we go.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, and you can like just go where your readers want you to go too.
It's a lot of interesting journeys, because sometimes I'm like, I did not see that coming, but okay, here we are.
Fun. How did you become an author?
I have a background in film and television, so I went to college for that. So I've been doing storytelling almost 30 years now. If I can be honest with myself, it's been a very long time. About 7 years ago, I found myself kind of in that place. I think most authors finally have to make a decision. I'm like, I'm sick and tired. I'm not living my purpose. I'm not creating. I'm not being what God put me here to do. And I ended up having to have one of those, come to Jesus moments, as we say here in the South. What am I going to do? Like, how am I going to fulfill this? What am I going to tackle? And I finally got to the point that I said, okay, I'm going to do a novel and see what happens. I'm going to do something, because right now I'm kind of stuck. And that's kind of what triggered it. I went from very much creating tons of little scripts and short stories and all these things into deciding I have nothing to lose, and I'm holding myself back, and I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So let's try this. So I have been publishing professionally for about 7 years now.
Okay, fine. Wow, you have a lot of books for only 7 years.
I've had a lot of stories for 30 years. I think that's what most people don't realize. It's like, the story's been in my head for a very long time. So yes.
Well, I'm glad you finally got them out, because it looks like it's benefiting all of us.
I have some peace. I can sleep now instead of wondering things. So yes.
Yeah. Do you sleep though? Because I wake up in the middle of the night and start thinking, oh, what about this?
Very little. I think when I first started writing, there was so much going on in my head that I think sleep and food went out the door for like the first 3 to 4 years. Now I can finally pace myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do this here, and this can wait. Or if not, I'm like, I'm never going to have a life.
Little bit of balance there.
Yes.
Good. Fun. So it sounds like you already said you're a pantser. You just kind of go with the flow. But do you have, like, when you go into a book, do you know where it's going to end? Do you know where you want to? Okay. So you have a little bit of a outline here.
I'm a little bit of both. So before I start writing, I literally have the whole book outline. So like, in order for me to actually start writing, so I spend a lot of time, which sounds kind of strange, in my head creating where I want to go. So the longest part of my process is literally outlining, just because I feel like my outlines is my security blanket. It makes me feel better to be like, okay, this is going to start, this is going to end. Also, is hugely beneficial when you're writing a mystery that has a murder, because you need to make sure you know who the murderer is. Like, that's not something that the characters can just kind of like, oh, I did it. I was like, yeah, no. You need to do it from the beginning. So I tend to outline, and in between my chapters, I'm very much of a pantser.
Okay. It's because with a murder mystery, you really have to put little clues in for the reader, and you have to figure out what those clues are going to be, and they can't be too big or too small, or it sounds much harder to write a mystery than any other thing to me, like not having written one. And I don't even want to try it, because it just makes my brain hurt.
You have to be a lot more careful. So the fun part about writing Cursed by Fur, I knew how I wanted this to go. So I sent it to my developmental editor, and she was totally confused. She's like, you need to give us more clues. This is not enough. This ending comes out of the blue. And then husband said completely the opposite. He's like, okay, so I went back and added some stuff to kind of make it a little bit more easier to follow. The husband was like, you added too much. Like, you just gave me the book in this chapter. I was like, oh. So I had to go back and pull some of that out. So it became a very nice balance to be like, I needed to be a shock without being like out of the blue, like, what? So it took a while to get that balance and be able to kind of be able to say, okay, here we are. This is how it's going to massage through this.
Well, that's good that you have those people that can like help you decide, what's the right amount to put in there.
it is easy to put too much or too little, as I found out doing in this book on both sides. I was like, how did we get there? But you also have to, like, I needed to make sure that I knew where I wanted this book to be, where I wanted it to start, and how I needed to end by the end of this whole entire process.
Fun. Yeah, I just started outlining, but I'm outlining after I write, which is like my editor was finally like, I need an outline. I'm like, okay, I'll do it after I write the chapter, but it'll be there. So, but I always know where I want them to begin and end. So I know what the ending is going to be. So I just keep writing until I get there. But yeah, and then I go back and fix it. So yeah, I think so many people have so many different ways to get to the end, to write or to whatever their process is, and as long as it works in the end, that's great.
I think that's the fun part about writing. It is so very much intuitive. It's whatever feels good to you. And sometimes the hardest part is to start. It's kind of one of the things I realized. I'm like, just start. Anywhere you start is going to be a great place, but just start.
Yeah, that's how I wrote my first book. It took me like 8 years of doing like an hour after my kids went to bed, but I was like, it was done. But like 8 years later, it was still done. So fun. And do you think, so you said you worked in the TV, so did you take any writing classes? I mean, maybe you had writing classes because you were in that industry in the storytelling.
So part of our curriculum on film and television. So I went to college. I did a lot of access television when I was in high school, as well as in college, and then through college as well. So a lot of the things that we have is a lot of writing and more creative writing in terms of script and character development. So one of the things that I usually warn a lot of the readers when they read my books, everyone's like, it feels like a movie. I was like, it has a lot of those elements of a script. So when you're looking at a movie or a TV series or a show, every chapter or every scene is in one location, and then they jump to the other one. So my books are structured in the same way, and they tend to be more action focused. So like there's something going on, then we stop here, then we go to the next one. So the creative process that I follow to some extent what feels very natural to me. And I think script writing and kind of that scene creation and going from one location to the other to move the story is what is natural for me to follow.
Well, and it must, I mean, obviously they're very popular. So the readers, it's very comfortable for them to follow as well.
It's very visually engaging. I think that's the fun part. While you're reading this book, you can really well imagine what is happening, just because that's just the structure of what I'm creating in these books that I want them to enjoy. I want people to get lost for whatever time you read this book. And just kind of separate yourself from the real world and just give yourself that break of like, okay, the madness is happening to somebody else, it's not me. It'll be okay.
So I'm guessing happily ever after in every book? No, I mean, not romance happily ever after, but you're not killing everybody off at the end of every book, right?
There's justice. I guess I can use that word better. Okay. There is justice. I don't know if happily ever after is what people expect. When I think of happily ever after, I always think, the couples are going to end up together and they're going to just be like, oh, that's not really what happens in my books. There's a form of justice for each one. There's a resolution. There's kind of like, okay, I think we can move on. Might not be what the readers are expecting, but it's going to have a resolution.
Well, we got shock and awe and surprise too, then I guess.
It'll be always exciting.
Well, what's coming for you next then?
I have changed my entire schedule, which is kind of hard for people to follow. It's just because it sounds a little strange, and I'm changing much more to fit my regular flow. So I am publishing in the fall, if that makes any sense. So I can spend the rest of the year writing, just because as I get older, I become much more narrow vision. So like I like to write in one season, then I can publish. I'm calling it my introvert extrovert season. So the introvert can focus on writing, and then the extrovert can focus on publishing. I have a couple of books that will be coming out. So I have a children's book. So I have Charlie and the Power of Imagination that'll be out in December. And I have a motivation book that's coming out in November. So I'm really excited. So a little bit different in each category now that I think of it. It's like I should pick like a season for like just like supernatural or something like that.
Publish your romance in January and publish your fantasy in October. Self-help goes, I don't know where self-help goes, but
I should work on this. I'm covering it all. Like I should really work on this. I was like, I should get a theme going on here for the months, but yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, but it is really hard. Like I released a book a couple of weeks ago, and I'm writing the next one, but it's been hard to like do all my release things that I need to do, as well as I have a deadline of November 4th to get the next book in. So I think it's a good way to plan it. I think you've done great with that.
After years of trying to do it all at the same time, I realized I'm always left exhausted. Like I have not enough bandwidth to switch from like promoting to writing, and I always feel rushed. I think my writing after months of publishing or promoting a book, I'm like, now we gotta write, run. So I'm trying to avoid that. Like I want this to be as smooth as possible and also as much fun as I can have. I think sometimes as writer, we put so much pressure on ourselves that we forget that this is supposed to be fun and this is supposed to be exciting and we're supposed to enjoy this flow. So we're going back to enjoying the process.
Very fun. Well, tell everyone where we can find you and your book.
Easiest place to start would be my website, which is dcgomez-author.com. You can check it out if you're looking for Cursed by Fur. It's actually on Kindle Unlimited. So take an opportunity. You can check it out there. It's on Amazon, and it should be a lot of fun.
Fine. Well, thank you so much for being here, and please come back when you have another book.
Thank you so much, and you have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.